Hello and welcome. My name is Max Peters and I'll be walking you through a poster. And this poster is about how a phenotypical time series data impacts the downstream options to extract water use parameters. After this poster, you will understand how time series data provides for creating a better signal and selecting the relevant information. For instance, time series data allows us to isolate a specific experimental phase or to focus solely on transpiration during the daytime. To illustrate this methodology, we've set up an experiment where tomato plants were grown under different drought stresses. First, we had a group where the plants were grown at 40% of field capacity, a group where they were grown at 60% of field capacity, and then the control plants, they were grown at full field capacity. In addition, during the experiment, we also had 3 distinct experimental phases. All the plants, they started out with the same irrigation regime. They were all topped up to field capacity every night, and this is called the acclimatization phase. Then, in the dry down phase, that drought stress was gradually introduced, and in the final phase, the stress phase, the drought stress was maintained for 14 days. But ultimately, we are interested in finding out whether the plants that were grown under drought conditions are more water use efficient. So we also needed data about the growth of the plants. So we collected growth data with the Phenospex PlantEye, and we've transformed this weight data from the DroughtSpotter into an evapotranspiration signal, listing the cumulative evapotranspiration of any plant at any point in time. But first, how does this compare to a more traditional way of phenotyping? So in traditional phenotyping, we would measure the biomass only at the end of the trial, providing us an overview of endpoint measurements where the plants at 40% field capacity, they would be the smallest. Then, with a decreasing drought stress, the biomass would increase. For the evapotranspiration, we would collect this data by growing the plants and maybe multiple times per week, bringing the plants to a weighing station, and then with a certain volume of water, topping them off to the target weight. At the end of the trial, we would sum up the total, the volumes of water, and have the total evapotranspiration over the experiment for every plant. To now understand which of these plants is most water use efficient, we simply divide the amount of biomass over the total evapotranspiration over the course of the experiment. That would yield us with the following plot, where we would find the 40% field capacity group. They are the least efficient in their water use, followed by the plants grown at field capacity, and the plants grown at 60% of the field capacity. They are the most efficient in water use. But now, what would that data look like if we had time series data? So when we have time series data, we can isolate the different experimental phases. For instance, here we show the acclimatization phase, and it's not unexpected that during this phase there's no differences between the treatment groups since they all received the same irrigation treatments. However, during the stress phase, this is where we had the different drought stresses, and now also we can see the differences between the treatment groups. The rank is the same as with the traditional phenotyping methods, only the differences between the groups, they are more pronounced. Since we now specifically isolate for this experimental phase, we can get rid of the noise which is introduced from the acclimatization phase and the dry down phase. So that's a great finding. This 60% field capacity group, that's the most efficient in the water use. However, it also gives rise to a new set of questions, such as whether the plants under drought stress, whether they transpired less. And to further dive into the plant responses, we can visualize the evapotranspiration as a rate. In this example, we calculated the water loss for every hour during the trial. Since the plants did not transpire during the dark, we only focused on the daytime measurements. In the panel here on the left, we observed the plants grown at full field capacity. They lost the most water at every hour of the day. Indicating these plants transpired the most. However, we also know tomato plants are classified as anisohydric, meaning they do not have tight stomatal control relative to the drought stress. So there is an alternative hypothesis at hand. Due to the water availability, the plants in the full field capacity group, they could be larger. And with the PlantEye data, we also have insights in the leaf area of every plant at any day. So when we normalize the evapotranspiration over the leaf area, it is clear that the plants at field capacity and 60% of field capacity, they do not differ much in their transpiration per leaf area. So to sum up, the normalized evapotranspiration rates, they show there's no difference in the transpiration per leaf area between the 60% field capacity group and the plants grown at full field capacity. This supports the hypothesis that tomato plants are anisohydric. However, the non-normalized evapotranspiration rates and the cumulative evapotranspiration, they underline the plants at full field capacity, they did transpire more water. However, from the water use efficiency differences, we can conclude the additional transpiration did not result in biomass accumulation at the same relative rate between the 60% group and the field capacity group. It is now beyond the scope of this research to conclude the cause, but options could be the plants in the full field capacity group, they could have been pot bound or nutrient stressed. Thank you for making the time to learn more about how time series data impacts your research on drought stress. See you around.